Hello, thanks for taking an interest in how I handle my humble finances. I have to warn you, I'm not good at making videos and I'm not good at speaking in general, so bear with me. A little about me. I'm unmarried and I have no kids. I have a simple job that doesn't pay very much and my goal is to save money and improve my credit. I don't struggle, but I think I'm near the category of living paycheck to paycheck. Because I don't keep track of my fixed expenses on my spreadsheet, I'll tell you how I manage them in a way that I find works well for me. You might even find it useful too. Despite all my fixed expenses being one-time monthly payments, I divided the total by 4. I did this because I managed them in a different way. I set up automatic transfers between my primary checking account and one I have set up to do only 2 things. First, to receive money transferred into it, and second, to have bills automatically withdrawn or paid. Every week, the day after I get paid, $259.89 is automatically transferred to that second account, and by the time a monthly bill is due, all the money is there and the bill is automatically paid. After I set it up this way, it required very little maintenance. All I notice is every Friday, $259.89 is transferred out of my primary account, and that's for all 6 of my monthly bills. Then the money just sits in that second account until a bill is due and it's auto-paid. It works great. The reason I did it this way was because I got tired of having one account and wondering how much money I really had available to me versus how much of it I had to save for a future bill or two that was coming. I didn't like the extra calculating I had to do, and it seemed like a waste of time. But with this method, when I look at the balance of my primary account, I know all the money in it is available to spend. I don't have to figure out how much of it needs to be reserved for future bills. And on the same note, it stops the threat of overspending and not having enough in your account when a bill is due. Also, doing it this way made me a lot more comfortable putting my bills on autopay to begin with, because I was confident I had the money in that account due to the weekly transfers, which was also an added bonus because it was a lot less to think about. Okay, moving on. Now in this section right here, you can see I took my monthly income and I subtracted my monthly bills, and then took that number and divided it by 4. That's my weekly budget right here, and that's the starting focus of my spreadsheet. Okay, here's my spreadsheet. I know you can't see anything, I've just zoomed it out so you can see it has multiple parts. These parts add a little more detail to track my money. Bear with me once again because I'm attempting to read a script in Notepad on one screen and navigate the spreadsheet on another. The section on the far left is where we'll start. It represents my purchases throughout July. This is where we start with that $190.11 figure. But that figure is not a budget per se. What it represents is the maximum amount of money that I can save that week. The amount in this cell at the end of the week represents how much my bank account increased or decreased. When a week starts, this shows $190.11, and then it gets smaller and smaller the more I spend over here. Over here are all my purchases broken down into categories. I have many categories that hopefully cover everything I may find myself spending money on. And I add a comment to every purchase to be more specific about that purchase. The more detail, the better. I log my purchases per category, not per receipt, if that makes sense. For example, I go to the grocery store and I buy 2 different kinds of things, groceries and cleaning supplies. They would get 2 different entries here. Over here, you'll notice a list of categories. These are things I find myself spending money on each week, sometimes multiple times. So I decided to keep track of them right here to see at a glance how much money I'm spending on each of these different categories. If this was your spreadsheet, you'd of course have different categories here that you might want to track per week. Going down to week 4, these entries with different backgrounds represent purchases I made on a credit card. The way I prefer to account for these purchases is I don't want these numbers being subtracted from what I am saving that week, because they're not actually being withdrawn from my bank account until I pay the bill. But the way I have this formula in this cell set up is these numbers right now are being subtracted, and this is negatively affected by these two numbers here. But in order to keep this an accurate representation of the growth of $71.44 that week on my bank account, I have to kind of balance it out. So what I do is I take these two numbers, I add them together, and I simply put plus, $7.80, so that this remains balanced and representative of the growth of my bank account that week. Now, once I do pay a credit card, that credit card bill withdrawal is going to hit in the week I'm currently in, and when it does hit, I am sure to add a special entry for it. Cards hit, I add a comment to be more specific about the charges and the date it was specifically charged in case I want to look it up online, and the amount, the total amount that was charged. I then take that number and I do the opposite. I go to this cell and I take the formula, and at the end of the formula I add and minus $132.22. So again, at the end of if this was the current week, this number would be an accurate representation of the either growth or reduction of loss of money in my bank account overall that week. Moving on, I keep track of my credit card purchases separately as well, because I don't want things lost in the shuffle over there with all my other purchases. So here is one card, here is another card, and I have a little combined total here so I can see what I have hanging over my head at one time. If you can see anything with a magenta box, you can see says it's paid and pending withdrawal from my bank account. The box also includes when a payment was made in a comment. And over here you can see this was paid on the 25th, and I'm waiting for that to be withdrawn from my bank account. And like I said earlier, when it is, I am sure to add this entry, an entry like this, to represent that during that week. So that's how I keep track of my spending on a weekly basis. When the week is over, though, there are a few things I do with the data once I collected it to make it more useful to me, to find out more information about what I'm saving, what I'm losing, where my money is going. The first thing I do is I take my account balance at the end of the week and I enter it in here, which is then automatically entered into this chart right here, which gives me a nice representation of my bank account trends over time. Then I take the amount of money I have left during that week, whether positive or negative, just take that amount there, and I go over to this section, which shows me the amount of money I saved per week, and then it adds it up to give me a total per month. I also have comments here to give me more information, which makes things a little easier to understand. More information, like I said, is always better. Then I go over to this section, which is kind of outdated now, because I have another section that does the same thing that I'll show you in a moment. This is average per category per week, so gas, grocery, food, all the total amount I spent on each of those, and the average per week I spend on each of those things. Going over here, here's a little pie chart of my expenses. This isn't as accurate as I'd like, but still a nice visual. This is my savings account that took me a while to save up to, so I'd like to be aware of that and have that included, because this is a spreadsheet of basically all my finances. Zooming out now, we're going to go to my second sheet, which will show me data over a very long period of time, and it'll show me data on, if you can remember, I have all these different categories right here. These categories are all logged and accounted for as well, just elsewhere. they are logged here in Sheet 2. Sheet 2 will hold a whole year's worth of data. On the top, all the columns are all my categories of things I might spend money in, and on the left here is all the months, and I just enter in the data at the end of the week. And the way it works is very simple. As the year goes on, this data gets more and more specific as more and more data is entered into it on a weekly basis, and I'm able to see very specific information like the average per week I spent, the average per month, and the total amount I spent on that category that year, year to date. So yeah, that is how I manage pretty much all of my finances, from my monthly bills to my weekly spending. The way I pay my monthly bills is super easy, and my spreadsheet has been a very useful tool for myself. I just wanted to kind of share it because it might help other people and give them some ideas for a spreadsheet of their own. Thanks for watching.